Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Today, joining me is Raptors Republic regular. It's Louis Zatzman. How you doing, buddy?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. What did you just realize?
Realized every podcast in the sports universe starts with hello and welcome.
Is it too? Should I not do that?
No, it's soothing. It's like I know I could.
It just feels like the thing to do.
I wonder who I want to do like a Pablo Torre episode and be like, who started hello and welcome?
Well, I have two theories.
Okay.
Oh, just now that we're discussing this.
Yes.
One is the No Dunks crew.
Yeah,
but they do their Good Morning Sweet World actually. So maybe not. Oh, you know who it probably is? It's Zach Lowe.
He does say it.
He does say it, and he's been podcasting for like 10 years.
Everyone,
I think it's Zach Lowe.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to bite Zach Lowe's style though.
But it's not intentional, you know. Who he is as a person has filtered into who we all are. Does he?
We all have a little Zach Lowe in us. He's going bald.
Well.
That's why it always makes me smile when guys wear like toques in their own homes on podcasts.
Yes. Well, I get cold and I'm too cheap to pay for heat.
That's okay. Wow. Reason. Okay. Yeah. That's also a reason. Yeah. That's so funny. Well, okay. Well, now Louis, do I rethink the intro?
No, I like it. I think if you're gonna zag, you need to make sure of it. If you're gonna change it, you have to make sure it's gonna be something magnificent,
like special. Because I'm just trying to think of others. Like Bill Simmons has like Pearl Jam music, and then
you listen to other sports podcasts,
and then he's like, "All right, I'm here with this guy, and we've been friends for 50 years, and let's shit on the Wizards for 5 minutes." Like, I mean, that's kind of how that one goes. Yes, I listen to other sports podcasts. I don't do this for a living like you.
Yeah, I listen.
So it's different.
My podcast
consumption
is like Freakonomics. I listen to the New Yorker fiction podcast. I don't do a ton of sports reading or listening.
Well, I think people who are in it to the level that you are also don't.
I listen to like you and Samson.
You listen to me?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, I'm the editor at Raptors Republic. I have to make
that's
sure
so
what's
nice.
going on. I gotta know.
You gotta make sure I'm on point. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't know. I like to listen to you guys. It makes me feel good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Samson has enough listeners. You don't need to listen to him.
I've derailed us immediately.
No, I love it though. I love it. I do listen to a lot of other basketball content. Sometimes I catch Zach Lowe. Sometimes I catch stuff on the Ringer. I listen to. Do you know Ben Golliver from the Washington
I do.
Post?
SI. He was.
Yeah, he was with SI. Now he's with the Washington Post.
When Sports Illustrated was an outlet.
There you go. And and then the No Dunks crew. So
they're fantastic.
They are. I kind of start my day with the No Dunks crew, and then I go on daily walks, and then I'll pick like another basketball podcast to listen to.
Nice. That's where I do my listening to is walking the dog.
Right. Yeah. I used to hate going on walks, and then the pandemic happened. Because I always just felt so aimless just going on a walk. But then when I realized
to be aggressive, but what kind of a person
doesn't like to go on walks?
Hates walks.
Well, I don't hate walks in general. I just didn't like the aimlessness of a walk. Like I always felt like I needed a purpose. Like I needed a destination.
Like how I don't like running, but you throw a frisbee and I love to chase it. That type of destination.
You put a bus I need to catch in front of me.
There you go.
I'm in the Olympics.
I understand.
But now, like when the pandemic happened, I had to get out. So then I decided that walking would be my podcast time, and then it felt productive.
That makes sense.
So that's how I got around it.
That's your destination.
Psychologically. Yeah. And now I live like near Hyde Park, and so it's like wonderful to go on walks.
Oh, I used to live near Hyde Park. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. It's been so beautiful with the fall colors and stuff, and my Instagram's just been fall foliage, but
Pop it.
like the basic bee I am. But let's get into some basketball talk. We always start with NBA and then get into Raptors. Last night was quite feisty. Chris Paul got ejected from the game from Scott Foster, which is notable due to their history. Also notable due to the fact that this really did not feel like an ejection type moment for an NBA game for those who watched it live or saw a clip of it later. The first text, sure, like he's complaining to Scott Foster about a call, but the second one, felt kind of out of nowhere. And then he immediately teed up Steve Kerr for complaining about it as well. So there was 3 technicals given in the matter of like a minute with very little happening. And after the game, Chris Paul did say that he felt it was personal. They do have quite the history. Chris Paul is 3-17 in playoff games officiated by Scott Foster, and that goes all the way back to 2008 with the Pelicans. So, their history has been written about before. It's been talked about before. Now people are saying that Scott Foster just should not officiate a Chris Paul game going forward because the bias does appear obvious. Louis, what do you think?
I have a controversial take here.
Yes.
I think grown adults screaming at other adults during their workday, no less, to the extent that their friends need to separate them is humiliating beyond humiliation. I used to think when Nick Nurse was the coach and he would scream himself red, I would watch that and just think I would be so thankful that my job doesn't require I shout my head off at another adult. It is, it's like, think about what kinds of people go about their daily realities shouting obscenities at coworkers. These are not people we want to spend our time with. These aren't people who are stable. These aren't people who are healthy. And then in the NBA, we valorize them for sticking up for themselves. I don't know, some absurdities. I think it's crazy. I think NBA players and coaches act like absolute buffoons when they scream at refs like that. I don't think it helps them. In fact, Mike Conley, I believe, he might have a technical now, but there was a long time where he didn't have a technical. And I read a piece about how he interacts with refs. He was like, "Oh yeah, I know them all by name, and if I have complaints, I'll talk to them like a normal human, and they'll listen to me. And I generally feel like it's all pretty good." And I honestly think that there's a lot of dehumanization going on to refs, not only by players but also by fans. Fans shouldn't know refs' names, right? Fans shouldn't be quote tweeting them on Twitter and shout. They don't get paid enough for that. Like players maybe get paid enough to get screamed at. They still shouldn't get screamed at. But refs definitely don't. I definitely don't. Fans scream at way too many people. Players scream at too many people. There's too much screaming. Too much screaming in general.
Louis just needs some peace and quiet, everyone.
Please God.
Well, I think like you do make a very interesting point, but I feel like one thing that's sort of kind of missing from this thesis, if you will,
is the actual relationship between the two of them.
Well, no, not just that, but just the fact that this is ingrained in the culture, right?
Yeah.
Like our office culture, it's a different culture, right? The way we interact with one another and so on and so forth. Where like in sports, I mean, that goes beyond basketball, but in sports, there's a certain level of aggression and aggressive behavior, verbally and otherwise, that is rewarded. Maybe like not in this specific scenario in terms of like getting a technical foul by a ref, but it's like there is a certain level of aggression that is rewarded that would be unacceptable in any other arena. Let's use the word arena.
Have you ever worked in an office?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you like it?
It was okay. I want to know where you're going with this.
No, I'm just curious because I realized when you said in our office culture, I was like, huh, I've never worked in an office.
You've never worked in an office. Okay. Well, I mean,
I've worked in bars a lot. I worked in a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, I had a whole other life before I became a screenwriter. So I used to work in various offices. And yeah, I mean, it's different. You can't be aggressive towards people. I mean, I had one guy, I remember like one guy was like really aggressive towards me in an email. And then I just like forwarded it to a supervisor. I didn't say anything. I just forwarded it. But that's what you do in an office.
That's right.
Right?
Pass the buck.
You pass the buck. Also, like, it helps when things are in writing because now you have receipts, and then you just forward it and then you let the powers that be handle it. But I mean, yeah, like sports culture is very different.
Yes.
So, and I think like, Chris Paul or any other player yelling at a ref back and forth. I mean, this goes back multiple generations now.
I still find it embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very valid that this is like unacceptable and that like they should behave differently. But
it's not even I accept
you can't change a culture overnight, is what I'm saying.
I accept it. I just think people who act within that culture are laughable. I find it laughable. I want to laugh at them in the pieces that I write about them. I can't obviously, but it's outrageous behavior, accept it or not. But as to the specific Chris Paul, Scott Foster thing, I am loath to believe there's anything personal. Ever since the Tim Donahue situation, the NBA has instituted a really, really tight ship of checking every call made by refs internally and externally. So they have an external monitor for every call made on the court and an internal monitor. So they're all checked twice. And the idea of there being a personal grudge between someone and it not getting picked up when they go through the every grain of every interaction to such an absurd extent seems unlikely to me. It's more likely to me that Chris Paul is suffering from the I don't know what it's actually called, but it's like the full moon syndrome, where a lot of healthcare workers think that people act more strangely during a full moon. It's also the same in bars, right? Servers think people act. It's like if you have
Scott
a crazy
Foster
table.
is his full moon.
Well, yeah. The idea is if someone's acting crazy, you're more likely to remember that it is a full moon than when they are acting crazy and it is not a full moon. So it's just a form of selective memory. Basically, once you've imprinted an expectation in your brain, we all suffer from this, right? This is not a rare thing. This is a universal syndrome. I don't know what it's called, but I call it the full moon syndrome. And I think it's quite likely that at some point Chris Paul was like, oh, this guy hates me. And now he just remembers when his calls go against him. But like Chris Paul is a very controversial player with refs. I mean, everything he does on the court is meant to really toe a very fine line with referees.
Yeah, he's antagonistic.
It's quite likely that he's going to be outraged at any referee working with him by virtue of his game. So I think it's a whole lot of nothing, and fans aren't aware of the level of oversight. So, I don't think it would be hard to convince people to jump on it. Remember the whole Jaren Jackson Jr. gets more calls at home thing, and everyone jumped last year and everyone jumped on that. If you actually went through the film, it was like all legitimate blocks that just people have no idea what they're looking at. So they just don't know how to credit it. And then finally, the 3-17 stat, that's the craziest small sample size. That's such a low sample size, particularly for the playoffs when Chris Paul's only playing really good teams, right? And Scott Foster only referees like high value games in the playoffs because he's considered one of the best refs. So yeah, I think it's unlikely that there's actually a grudge match between the two. There are technical fouls that are personal sometimes. Maybe that was one of them last night, but I wouldn't go further than that.
I mean, the interesting thing about the 3-17 stat is I've never seen a stat like that between a player and a ref.
How many player ref stats have you seen?
Very few. You know what
So
I mean? Like
maybe
it's not,
there's a lot of
but
them
what
like that.
my point is that it's not a common stat. So that's the thing. It's like, you don't know if that's a common stat
That's
or
right.
if it's actually so egregious that that's why it got pulled out of the stratosphere because it's so rare. So it's like, I don't know which one that is, but I
If
do
it was
find
very
it
rare,
interesting that the, ESPN Brian Windhorst is
yeah.
really the one that's put his cap on that stat and has made it more well known.
If it was very rare, I imagine when you heard the stat, you would also hear what the rarity is. And the fact that they don't tell you if it's rare or not probably means it's not particularly rare.
Interesting. But okay, so then how do you feel about Chris Paul saying that he feels that it's personal? 'Cause
I'm
he's
sure he
been in
does
this
feel that way.
because he's been in this league for a very long time and he hasn't said that about any other ref, despite the fact that he's antagonistic all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure he does feel that way. I'm sure Chris Paul was very upset with how that game was refereed last night. I didn't watch the game I should add, I did not watch. I watched a clip of what happened between them. I also thought it was a little bizarre, the technical fouls that were given. I've seen lots of bizarre technical fouls given, though. That's not uncommon in the
Well,
least.
I think it's like it's one of those things where like it's very subjective in that any other ref might have just left it at 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Chris Paul, can I swear?
You can.
Chris Paul called him a
You're the
bitch.
editor. No, I'm kidding.
Right? That's a technical foul. And you could see it, right? He gave a technical foul. He walked away to de-escalate. That's Scott Foster. And Chris Paul shouted, "You're a bitch. You're a bitch." That's a technical foul. Like, but just by the letter of the law, that's what that is. Unless you're Draymond Green, that's a technical foul.
I mean, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know what these guys are saying all the time and what goes too far or doesn't go too far. I mean, I think a lot of that type of language gets used. But yeah, I mean, to me, it feels weird. To me, it feels like I know a lot of people are harping on this, and maybe you're right. Maybe it is nothing, but to me, it feels like there's something there. Especially for a player to come out and say like it feels personal. Scott Foster hasn't commented on it beyond just saying that it was unsportsmanlike conduct and that's why the 2 texts were given. He was
He
very
said, "Who's a bitch
technical.
now, Chris?"
Yeah, he copied Rudy Gobert and was like, "Oh, he was just sad Draymond wasn't in the game or something." I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. It's something
Christopher Paul acted against the rules.
Yeah, I mean, the funniest thing was that, like, after the game when Chris Paul was talking about it, he was like, "Yeah, well, I guess there'll be a call during a game 7 at some point with him, or a game officiated by Scott Foster with him at some point." They're not even in the playoffs right now. The Warriors are 11th in the West. So
maybe he was just upset about that.
Maybe, but as of right now, there is not a game 7 on the horizon for this
or even
team.
a game 1.
Or even a game 1. So, they've got a lot to figure out. A lot of people have been talking about the whole Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins thing. I didn't know how much I wanted to get into that, but because I just feel like everything has been said. Because I assume people who listen to this podcast also listen to other sports content, like myself. Maybe I shouldn't. But a lot of people are like, Klay Thompson is washed. He's done, blah, blah, blah. I personally don't feel that way. I also have a huge Klay Thompson bias. I love him. But to me, I think Andrew Wiggins is far more concerning for his lack of production. He's like, his stats are down by like almost half across the board. And it can't be explained by a previous injury the way Klay Thompson's decline can be explained by that. Especially with his age and everything too. The whole thing baffles me with him. There's a lot of talk about Klay Thompson being traded. I don't think they'll trade him. I also don't think his trade value is high enough to make it worth it to trade him. I think he would come off the bench before he was ever traded. And for all the talk about him wanting a max contract, it's just not going to happen. And I think he'll accept that when the time comes. But Wiggins could maybe be on the trade market. I know his trade value is probably at an all-time low for the Warriors, but I don't know. I don't have like trade ideas on our docket for today, but that's kind of where I would lean.
Teams get old. And the thing about the Warriors, but any super team really, is like they're you can never doubt them until it happens, right? Because if you doubt them, you're going to be wrong, then you're going to be wrong, then you're going to be wrong, then you're going to be wrong, and then finally, eventually, you'll be right. But you were wrong the whole way there. So you may as well just believe in them until it doesn't happen. Then you're only wrong once. And so I believe in teams like the Warriors, just old, dying teams until they're actually in the ground. But eventually, they go in the ground, right? And the thing about the last championship is, for all of his seeming ill-fitting with the Warriors, Jordan Poole brought the juice. He was young, he was rapid, he like just ran hard. He brought juice that a lot of old players can't. And Chris Paul, for all of his veteran shenanigans, is pretty juiceless right now. Is there anyone on that team with any juice outside of Steph
That's just
Curry?
such a funny way to describe someone as juiceless.
No, I commonly describe basketball players as juiceless, mostly in pickup. If someone just like has no ability to shake me with off the dribble, they're going nowhere. They pound the rock, they dribble for 30 straight seconds. That's just a juiceless. Like, what are you doing? Where are you going with this?
Oh, it just feels, I
That's
don't
Chris
know, it
Paul.
feels so cold to me somehow. Yeah, I mean,
It's a cold world.
It's a cold world. I mean, I think like for all their issues with their current roster, I think their biggest issue is the fact that they're just too small. And for all the Zach LaVine talk or whoever, it's like that does not move the needle for them enough. They do. I don't know who would be available. I don't know what star big or something that would really change things for them. But yeah, it's. I love this team, but it's not looking good. I am like you. I will remain a believer, mainly because of Steph Curry. Steph Curry is just playing out of his mind right now.
Preposterous.
Let's talk about another very interesting moment that happened last night. We're recording this on Thursday, by the way. This comes out Friday. That's why I keep saying last night. Greg Popovich took the mic during a game, took the arena mic during a game to ask fans to stop booing Kawhi Leonard. Wild stuff. This is not a game that I watched. I was watching the Warriors, but saw a clip of this after the fact. Wow. First of all, kind of surprised that the Spurs are still booing Kawhi Leonard after all these years. He did win them a championship, I mean, I don't like the way he left San Antonio for sure, but it's been several years now. So I didn't even realize that was even a thing. And it's kind of hilarious. It's very curmudgeon-y of Popovich to do that. But also, I kind of love how much he just doesn't care anymore. Thought it was a very
interesting. He does care.
I guess, no, he does care, but I mean, doesn't care what other people will think of him.
Right.
You know what I mean? By doing something like that. And, yeah, very, very interesting move. What do you think?
If I had been at that game, I would have melted with laughter. It would have been like I would have laughed myself into a puddle. It's there's just so many hilarious things that happened all at once. So one, a coach takes the in-game microphone, hilarious, during a game, amazing. Second, he's waited 6 years, 5 or 6 years to let his feelings be known, because they've been booing him this whole time. Has he just been every time they visit? I mean, he's been in the West for a while, so that's 2 home games a year for years and years.
A little less though, because
the
pandemic.
Season,
yeah.
But so maybe one. So let's say there have been probably 7 to 8 games in San Antonio. Does that Kawhi only plays about half the game, so probably 3 or 4 games in San Antonio.
God, now you think about it, that's fewer opportunities to boo him. But anyways,
in these 3 to 4 times, has he just been sitting there like, oh these bastards, these fans? Has he been furious, but just not had the gumption to say anything, and he finally perked himself up to lecture the crowd in game. Do you think that's what happened?
I don't know. Or maybe it just like dawned on him now that like this has gone too far.
Because coaches always say they don't notice stuff like that. Because coaches, they have to pay attention to so much. It's like, did you? I had to watch this in a high school philosophy class. But did you ever see the video where they're like, count the throws between these people on a screen? They were all throwing a ball back and forth. You have to count the number of times they throw it. Okay, so there's this video.
My high school didn't have philosophy.
And then
kind of rich high school you went to, they had philosophy.
And then at the end, they were like, did anyone see something funny about the video? And a bear walked into the back of the screen, like a person wearing a bear suit, and like waved and then walked off. And just no one ever notices this because you're focused on throwing the ball. No one ever sees the bear. Look it up. It's a very interesting video. And that's apparently coaches, right? Because they have to focus on every play being run and all the coverages and every person in the coverage and what to do next. There's just so much in their head that they almost never notice what crowds are doing. So I find it very surprising that he even hears the boos, particularly because he's like 107 years old. So hearing is hard, but it's so funny. It's just so funny. I love it.
I mean, I love that he did it. I really love that he did it. Maybe he's like, you know what? We have Wemby now and you need to move on. Maybe it's the Wemby present.
He waited. Do you think he was right? Do you think the crowd is wrong to boo?
Ooh, that's a good question. This is going to be interesting. Curious to know what the Toronto Raptors fans think as a fan base that booed Vince Carter for 10 years. We booed Vince for probably too long.
No,
10 years is a long time to boo him. I mean, I was upset too. I was heartbroken. I loved Vince, but by 2014, I was over it.
Yeah. At that point, it's
like
just,
he left in 2004.
That point, your subconscious is taken over. It's like, I've booed for so long, I don't know how else to live my life.
You're just autopilot booing.
Yeah, you're auto booing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Kawhi deserves a few boos, but maybe now we're enough years removed.
I think booing. So a lot of fans are like, well, never tell a fan not to boo. Fans are allowed to boo. I think fans can boo improperly. Like, I think the Goran Dragic boos were really stupid because he was a bit player. He was like a nothing. He was just like beneath
I agree.
The Raptors, right?
Such a nobody in the grand scheme of things. For
it's debasing yourself to boo like a bench warmer, right? But Kawhi Leonard, I mean, it's hard to know. Like, you know, his camp has maintained that the doctors misdiagnosed his knee and he didn't trust the team and the bridges were broken. But fans don't see it that way. Fans saw a star who quit on the team and didn't want to be there anymore. And so I don't think booing Kawhi is beneath them. I have no problem with them booing Kawhi Leonard. Fans in today's day and age don't do enough in stadiums. They're too busy like tweeting at players from within the stadium. I think more in stadium booing, cheering is good. Stadiums are quiet. There's so much piped in fan noise everywhere now.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I agree. I noticed there was a shift a few years ago where like being in a stadium is just a lot of people looking at their phones, even though we've had phones for a long time. But it feels like in more recent years, it became more about being on your phone, which is not great. Also, it's like it costs enough money to be at a game to actually just like watch the game.
So many people watch it
not
through
that
their
I'm
phone.
not looking at my phone either. I'm not claiming I'm better than anybody, but you know, I've complained about this on this podcast before, but I went to the Philadelphia playoff game when we lost in the first round, 2022. And it was that game where we lost in overtime and Joel Embiid hit that 3. And
rough game.
There, you know, it was a close fourth quarter. Things were intense. This is the playoffs. And there was a guy next to me that was filming himself. Let's go Raptors. And I was so livid. I was like, leave.
Think of the Instagram story, though.
That's an expensive Instagram story.
That's right. That's an expensive Instagram story.
You know what I mean? Like, in the fourth quarter of a playoff game to be filming yourself, it's like, you're not real. You're not
You
a
should
real
have taken
fan. You
the
are
in-game
only
mic.
here for clout, and that bothers me.
You should have taken the in-game mic and lectured him about it.
I wish. I hated that whole crowd. It was like I was in the 300s and there were like Bay Street suit guys there, and like no one wanted to wear the free t-shirt because
Yeah.
everyone's fits were nicer
Yeah,
than
yeah,
the
yeah,
free
yeah.
t-shirt. That's when I really knew things had changed.
It's the thing about the old days is they're the old days.
Damn. Don't make me feel old. I am old. It's fine.
Should coaches even be allowed to take the in-game microphone?
No, but he's Popovich.
It's just such a bizarre circumstance.
No.
What if he set a precedent? What if coaches take the microphone now and be like, Gary, I've been trying to tell you we're running we're running thumbs down on this set. You haven't acknowledged me. Gary, listen to me, please. Like, where's the line now? Now that he started
I love
doing
that if you were a coach and you took the microphone, that is what you would say.
I'd be like,
because it's the first thing
nobody
you thought
heard my
of.
play call.
They take the mic and they're just like, this ref is taking things personally and I'm not okay with it and I demand a review.
Takes the mic. Scott Foster, you're a bitch.
That would get the crowd riled up.
Too riled up.
A little too riled up. Yeah, that would become a scary crowd, actually.
Yeah, that would be like Malice at the Palace.
Yeah, that's when you're like, okay, I'm gonna leave. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk a little. We're just looking at our topics here. Let's talk a little bit about this rookie class so far. A lot of talk about Wemby, a lot of talk about Chet. To me, they are clearly the most impressive rookies this season so far. Chet really kind of leading, I would say, the rookie of the year race. But they're both really fun to watch. Also, Chet's just on a better team, and I feel like people are actually a little hard on Wemby. I feel like he has games where he scores like 40 points, and then he also has games where he scores like 10. But he's figuring things out on a bad team. And I actually think this is like my little like hot take, if you will, but a positive one is I really think these two could end up being the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson of their generation. I really feel like this is a fun rivalry in the making, and I think we'll be comparing these two together for a long time. Hopefully, Wemby can end up like the Spurs can get their shit together, and Wemby can be on a competitive squad. But yeah, I love these two, and I see the potential. I see the future of this league with both of them leading the way.
Yeah, they are the future. They for a long time, I thought Brook Lopez was like, we lived in the shadow of Brook Lopez's league.
When you say long time, how long?
Like 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years. Okay. I thought from the Bucks championship to about last year, for virtually any star that was underperforming, it's like, oh, we'll just get him a Brook Lopez. But then you look at the numbers, like there's only, he's the only Ty Crane. There just isn't another center who can hit deep threes, protect the rim, and duck in for post-ups when someone puts a small on them. Like, you can find threes who can block shots and hit threes, or bigs who can block shots and hit threes, but you can just put a small on them and then that's fine, right? But if you put a small on Brook, he's just going to take you to the post and score every time. So those 3 skills, and like no one has those 3 skills, and then Wemby and Chet Holmgren come along.
Wow, so unprofessional, Louis.
I apologize. Then Wemby and Chet Holmgren come along, and they are just insane evolutions of this. Like, I recognize that Wemby's shot hasn't come around yet. I think if he plays with a point guard a little more, his jumper will look more fluid because he's getting it in more natural rhythms. But Chet shooting like what, over 40% from three. He's an insane rim protector. They're both defenders of the highest caliber as rookies.
Yeah.
And on top of it, they have all these in-between skills. Like they both have driving skills. They're insane gap defenders in a way that Brook Lopez isn't. There's pardon me. They both have ball handling skills. They're insane. It's just like, whoa, the shadow of Brook Lopez has just eclipsed anything that this guy could even possibly be. And the talent coming into the league, my God, if we can expect players like this, because part of what makes them who they are is they grew up watching everyone shoot threes. You know, they were like probably 6'8" at 12 years old. Don't check my math. And they're like, oh, everyone shoots threes, so I'll practice threes. Whereas if you're that size at that age, you know, for so long.
In the past, like, you never did. Yeah.
Yeah, you never did. But they practice shooting threes from a young age. And so just like, if this is what we can expect, my God, Brook Lopez will go from being this unique quality to like a mandatory quality on every team.
I mean, they practiced hitting threes, but also practice like ball handling and other like point guard skills, right?
Movement threes, like they're running off screen. Oh my God.
It's incredible. I love that you're giving Brook Lopez all this credit instead of Dirk Nowitzki.
Well, Dirk Nowitzki, did he ever play center?
Did he not?
No, he played next to Tyson Chandler.
Right? Okay, yeah. He was power forward, but similar to Giannis,
like Eric
right?
Dampier, and
not exact game, but in terms of being these bigs that stretch the floor in ways we had never seen before. I feel like that was the first kind of real iteration of seeing that, and then also seeing the league change because of it.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely was the forerunner, right? He was the prophet, and Brook Lopez is his disciple.
Wow.
But a disciple that's taken the game
this Brook Lopez love directions. I did not expect. He's
just a disciple. He's a disciple.
A disciple of Dirk. Okay. All right, I'm here for it. Okay, let's move on to our Raptors homer moment here. We've got a lot to talk about. We've had a very interesting week, like a horrible blowout loss to the Magic, followed by a really fun win against the Pacers. I sent you an article from the Daily Hive only because this article was like, we are on the verge of having another lost Raptors season. And but I also, when you like Google like Raptors like news and articles and headlines, as I do, there's a lot of people that are also like, here are some real positive takeaways from the Raptors this week. And you get this combination of the two all the time. And so I want to know, like, where do you land? Are you panicked? Are you optimistic? Where are you at?
So I love Adam. I sit beside Adam Lascaris, who's at the Daily Hive at games. I really like him a lot. But what I would ask him, reading that piece, is what would constitute a not lost season? And I guess I'll ask you in lieu of Adam. I don't think anyone expected Toronto, or no one should have expected Toronto, to do anything meaningful in the playoffs this year. So what constitutes a not lost season in your eyes?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great question. And for me, I think a lot of this does in fact come down to expectations. Like, I came into the season with very low expectations. But I also came into the season seeing a lot of people predicting we would be like 6th in the East. And I was like, that is a very serious best case scenario for this squad. Like, I see this being a growth year, hopefully, for our younger players. Question marks around Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby feel like they'll remain till the end of the season. But, this felt like a growth year to me for all our players. And then if we made the play-in, great. But I think, to me, even making the play-in is what I would consider relatively successful for this squad. I mean, like Dennis Schroeder, who, has had some inconsistencies, but overall has been pretty good for this team this year, I'd say, is a backup point guard on a good team.
Yep.
Right? Like, you know what I mean? Then that's no knock against him. It's just on a winning team, he is off the bench, but he is our starting point guard. So it's like when you realize like that is your team, you kind of know where they should be set in your mind. But I feel like for, I don't know Adam personally or anything, but I feel like when you say like this could easily be a lost season, I get the impression that they had higher playoff like expectations for the squad.
So I think I see my expectations were very micro and very macro. So my micro expectations have by and large been fulfilled. I wanted to see Scottie Barnes expand his role and his individual skills. He is running more pick and roll. He's being used more in like dynamic sets, handoffs. Skill wise, his jumper looks unbelievable. His handle looks tighter. His gap dribble looks, there's all these little things that I'm really impressed by. His defense is like, I've never seen a player go from what he was last year on defense to this year on defense. It's insane. I'm so impressed with his micro progressions. I also wanted to see Precious Chua take a lot of leaps that I haven't seen. I thought Grady Dick might hit jumpers. Other things that I expected for success in the future that I might see this year. But by and large, for me, Scottie Barnes' game was the major thing, and 10 out of 10. But on the macro level, what could make this a lost season is if the front office doesn't address the skill deficits at the guard spot. Like you said, Dennis Schroeder's not a starting point guard on a championship team, but they just don't have enough point guards and shooting guards on the team. They don't have guys who are going to create advantages, get to the rim, hit pull-up jumpers. They have no one who's going to hit a pull-up jumper this year, which is crazy. They just need some of those players on the team. And on top of that, two of the most important players, Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, as well as another vital one in Gary Trent Jr., are all upcoming free agents. And so the team really needs to make choices. I don't care if that happens now or at the trade deadline. There's no difference if it's as long as it happens. But if it doesn't happen, if the team just kicks the can down the road until there's no more road and then they lose the can, that's a lost season. But we'll find out if that happens.
Right. And we might not find that out until the summer.
Yeah. Well, the trade deadline, I expect.
Yeah. Oh, in February, you think they'll do something with Pascal Siakam by then?
I don't think they'll go to the summer with all three of those players as free agents. I would be very surprised by that. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, I'm kind of in the camp where I thought a lot of this was going to happen by last year's trade deadline. So now I feel like I don't even know what to expect anymore. With this front office, I think, it's been talked about before, but like one of the frustrating things is being a Raptors fan right now is this feeling of being like directionless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just the fact that you have, articles by various people who cover the Raptors with completely, not just different perspectives, because you always want different perspectives, but completely different ideas of where this team should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Or where they're trying to be even.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. And there can be a retroactive direction, right? They can make a choice and then we can look back down the road and see, oh, I see how that direction has been the direction the whole time. Makes sense. Problem solved. But that's not the case right now. And they're going to need to prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of interesting stuff coming up in the future. Another thing that I haven't really had the chance to dive into on this show yet because most of it happened in the summer, but there's been some developments recently, and that is this lawsuit with the New York Knicks. So essentially, the latest is that a court filing on Monday by the New York Knicks said they're seeking more than $10 million in damages from the Raptors as part of a lawsuit alleging the theft of thousands of confidential files. So the latest is that in October, the Raptors made a motion to dismiss this complaint by the Knicks and to have Adam Silver arbitrate the dispute. But in Monday's filing this past week, the Knicks argued that Adam Silver's relationship with Larry Tenenbaum would be a conflict of interest and that Adam Silver should, in fact, not get involved with this lawsuit. So to bring people back in case they're not sure of the details of this lawsuit. So the Raptors hired former Knicks video assistant. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Is it Azatam?
Yeah.
Azatam. As I believe he was an analytics video development assistant, and then I believe he was hired to be a director in Toronto. But anyways, it is claimed that he deliberately violated a term in his employment agreement. I guess allegedly like violating these privacy laws, and that the Raptors knew he was violating his previous employment agreement and knew that he was conducting himself in quote wrongful acts. So that is why this lawsuit exists. Louis, break this down for us. What is going on?
Remember earlier in this very podcast when you said NBA culture is not the same as office culture?
Yes.
In the office, if you download
go.
your previous proprietary information and send it to your new email address, that's illegal and you're going to get punished. Now, in the NBA, that remains illegal. Well, it's certainly frowned upon, but it's extremely common, not done as sloppily as the Raptors did it. The Raptors did it very sloppily, right? You don't email it to your own address. That's not how you move work along. But the most likely thing that happened, and this isn't just me as a biased observer, this is from anyone really who knows anything about how the NBA actually works, people who used to work there and such, is he downloaded his former work, brought it with him for his application, right? His job application. This is work I've done, right? This is an example of some work I've done. As someone with a Synergy login, and as someone who has sent people thousands of files from Synergy, because each file is like 6 seconds long, I've sent Samson thousands of files for one piece he's doing. That's not a lot. That's like 2 hours of film. That's a normal amount of stuff for like someone who works in the business. It's crazy. So, yeah, they did it sloppily, right? The Raptors are probably going to get dinged. They're going to get slapped on the wrist because they did sloppy work. But they did sloppy work that everyone in the industry does. And so I understand why the Raptors said Adam Silver should arbitrate, because every team does this. And Adam Silver would say, James Dolan, you are embarrassing the league. In fact, if David Stern was still the commissioner, there would be bodies in the ground before he would let this get out of the in-house settlement, right? He would like, as
that's true.
He would have opened up his wallet and said, what do you want? You want money? How much money? I'll give you bills right now, but you will never mention this again. Like he would never have allowed this. This is absurd. This is actually an absurdity that this is going to court. I imagine the Raptors lose. They have to pay like $10,000 or something. $10 million is a joke. They'll probably pay like $10,000 or something. You know, by the letter of the law, they committed, you know, they violated trades, whatever it is. I don't know, but not to a degree that matters. It affected no meaningful, you know, competitive whatever. And there's a reason why the Knicks are trying to not have it arbitrated by the league, even though by the letter of the law, it falls under the the jurisdiction of the league. And so he's going to lose that, right? Adam Silver, if he wants to adjudicate this, has every right in the books to do that because he is the commissioner of the NBA and they are franchises of the NBA. And so they're saying their case is, on one hand, this is not a competitive violation, which is why it doesn't go to the NBA. But on the other hand, they're suing for competitive violation. It's an absurdity. It's embarrassing for the Knicks that they're pursuing this. It's crazy.
You're embarrassed by this whole league, Louis.
I'm a dignified person being faced by an undignified world.
Wow. Aren't we all? I feel like personally, like, my first impression was I'm shocked that the New York Knicks have files of value. This is the New York Knicks. I don't know why.
Well, Synergy, they don't have these files. Like, if you want the files, I could go get you those files right now. That's the crazy part.
I mean, if I was a real journalist, maybe, but you could do it. You could do it.
Hard. These are not difficult. That's the craziest thing. It's like, this is not proprietary. They pay Synergy for this. So I guess, like, you know, it's paid stuff, but it's also like not high value.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Dolan gives me the impression that he's a bitter Betty. But also didn't he like resign from certain NBA operations? There was a funny
he said,
quote
nobody likes me. I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah. He has a quote from the summer that was like, I understand people don't want to know what I have to say about the NBA. Yeah. Like, people don't care what I think, which is like a very weird thing to hear a billionaire admit. I'm not used to billionaires admitting that we don't care about what they think. I mean, hello, other billionaires should maybe take note. But yeah, the whole thing is truly bizarre, and it's dragging on. That's the other thing about this, is that it's really dragging on. And you're right. I do feel like at some point the Raptors will end up paying that $10 million and they'll move on from this.
Oh, way less than 10 million.
Way less. But James that's okay. Dolan, well, that's what the lawsuit is worth right now.
Yeah, but just because you sue for that,
they can settle for less. I understand.
James Dolan should take all his money and buy himself a spine. Like, this is crazy. I can't believe it.
Wow.
Or he can buy himself his own, proprietary video database, in that you could actually allege corporate espionage if it got stolen, because Synergy is not that important.
Right. Well, I mean, is it so not classified that the Raptors could actually win this thing?
Well, no, because it's paid, right? If it was free,
then paid. The Raptors I don't understand how it works.
Yeah, it's paid. So my access is through the former 538. So it's like an ESPN login, right? Synergy is about to. So Synergy, okay, there's a couple paid stats databases. Synergy is the lesser of the two that I know of that are, like, well used. The other is Second Spectrum. Second Spectrum uses the Sports View cameras that are in all the stadiums and take like 7 shots a second, or some 12, I don't know, some number of shots a second for every game. They sort all the database. And so Second Spectrum has all the data for, like, any play with a pick, for example, whether it's at the beginning, at the end, where Synergy is just plays that end in a pick. So it's a lot lower value than Second Spectrum. It has a lot less sort of detail than Second Spectrum. It's going to be better because Hawkeye, which is like a new 3D modeling camera that they're putting into stadiums, will be through Synergy. Doesn't matter. They don't have access to that right now. It's not working very well. Ben Dowsett has some good reporting on that if anyone cares. But these stats databases are not unique to NBA teams. They do have in-house statistical modeling that if someone stole that would actually be a big deal, right? That stuff is like, they designed it in-house, they created it, they paid a lot for it, they use it, it's important. I don't have access to that. I don't know what that is. But I know that the stats they use by NBA teams are way above the stats available on Second Spectrum and Synergy.
Well, I mean, the lawsuit does say that it is in fact proprietary information.
Yeah, because it's like it's a clip reel basically, right? That's what you can do with Synergies. You can
That's what makes it proprietary?
Yeah, it's the work that goes into putting all the clips together.
Right, which is their analysis essentially of those clips.
I guess his analysis.
His analysis of
because it's
clips.
his job application.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I get it. I didn't know that was the whole behind the scenes how it works. So now we know. Yeah, just really bizarre stuff. We'll see if that actually settles soon or settles for how much or what. But yeah, Dolan, Bitter Betty. Let's move on to our Raptors hottie highlight of the week. And Louis, it was hard for me to come up with a hottie highlight this week, but I decided it goes to the in-season court. The court itself is going to win our hottie highlight of the week this week because it is the best looking in-season court of all of them, I believe. It's too bad the Raptors don't care about it more so we can see more of it. But yeah, we got the best in-season court. And then also Jaylen Brown was complaining, saying it was unprofessional. And that's low-key a win for us too. So shout out to the court. And also too, like, I mean, obviously the courts need to be safe, but it's just funny to me that like very select players have complained about it because you think that's like something that would affect everybody or nobody.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting to me that like 5 players have complained about something that literally affects every single player that touches the court. But, you know, still a win for us. Too bad we lost that Boston game, but very nice court.
I have a take I know is unpopular.
You hate the court?
I like them.
No.
Even the ugly, like Baja Blast courts with like pink and turquoise. I just think it's cool to be different. It reminds me of like the ABA nonsense. I don't think they're aesthetically pleasing, but I still think it's cool that they're doing it.
But some of them are just straight up hard on the eyes. Let alone what I actually think of them aesthetically, you know what I mean? Like especially the red ones. The red ones are legit just hard on the eyes. Like
the red one felt like something out of Game of Thrones. I couldn't have been happier.
Wow. No, I'm not about this. Like the Philadelphia court is like really terrible. And I'm like, but they also have like blue and white and like that was like they could have easily gone for like a more Americana look because that's like their whole logo anyways. I don't know why they chose not to do that, but then like teams like the Bulls, like they got to grayscale that a little more. Like that's like
the gray has turned out. I like the Orlando Magic's court too.
Yes,
which was some grayscale.
Yeah.
Teams that toned it down a little, I think, look good.
Yeah, because I think like they all looked nice as like a thumbnail on your screen when you first saw like the previews of it. But then the actuality is just
the Miami Heat was like just the blood red, right? Just pure red.
Yeah, I think
that was the Heat. I love that. That was so psychotic.
But you love it for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
You love it like a toxic girlfriend. Like you love it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Manic Pixie Dream Court.
There you go. But the court wins it. Shout out to the court. Hopefully the Raptors have a hottier week this week and I can have like a real person pick. But let me know if you feel like I missed a hottie highlight that you would like to be highlighted. Louis, thank you so much for joining me this week. Let us know what you're up to and where people can find you on the internet.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a pleasure. I always really, really enjoy coming on. So thank you. I have a piece coming out. Well, that came out this morning as of the listening to this piece about Pascal Siakam, which I'm really, really excited about. Super fun writing. I'll just leave it at that. I'm really
you're not going to tell us any bit
about it's about Pascal Siakam's post-ups, but I'm trying to mimic the rhythm of his post-ups with the writing, where it's like choppy, and then like long and flowing with like the spin. So I'm really enjoying the process of that. And yeah, you can find that at Raptors Republic.
That's fantastic. I have a piece coming out about Scott Foster being a little bitch. That will not be on Raptors Republic, but thank you again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Okay, bye.